I've been a governor, a Navy SEAL, a fighter. I've heard things that'll blow your mind. And now I think it's time you get the whole story. That's right, just like Jesse Ventura, your main man is a fighter, and today we're going to be talking about how to fight that good fight in RPGs, with dungeon mastery, with game mastery, and we're going to talk about how to game master one of the greatest core components of any good game master, flexibility. If you don't have flexibility, you don't have much of a game style, and I'll break it down following as to why that is. But before we get into that, within the Ring of Fire store open up, we have shirts and hats. We have more coming. All those great catchphrases your main man has, we'll be slinging them out there, and you can get them at your leisure. And we also even have maps, full-size poster maps of Kavega. You can just click on there. You can have a look, and you can see what is coming as we come closer and closer to that date where you will get your imagination burned, because some stories can only be told within the Ring of Fire. Now, today we're talking about flexibility, and that's that same sort of imagination that you need to take and sculpt and bend and make that wonderful reality come to fruition. That reality that you create inside that collective ethereal gaming space. I'm not talking about a table. I'm not talking about a virtual table. I'm talking about the table of the mind. And in that table, all realities can come to fruition. So if you're a game master, one of my absolute quickest dismissals of game masters are rules as written. If you have a rules as written mentality mindset, if you have a core book mentality mindset, I'm probably not going to play with you. And I trust me, those are things I'm going to ask right off the bat in any sort of interview. And yes, I interview anyone that I'm going to play with, because I can. And I can be selective and picky because there's a certain style that I want. I want to have that immersion. I want to have whatever tools the game system can possibly provide for me to creating and crafting the character I have in here. I don't want to compromise at all. And I don't need to. You shouldn't compromise either. The less you compromise, the better you're going to be able to do. Now, there's a big problem here. A lot of game masters are damaged. They're damaged by rampant raping of power gaming and that persuasion of player, the rules lawyer, the insidious individuals. And first of all, you can quickly, with a quickness, dismiss rules lawyers. After all, you've established that you're going to do things your way. You're not going to go raw, because there's only one raw you need to worry with. And your main man is telling you right now what is really good for your nuggets, and believe it. When we examine flexibility and creativity, you want to bring those character concepts that your players bring you to life. You don't want to punish them and force them into certain ways of thinking and creating characters. Don't go, oh, well, you're playing a fighter, so you better have a good strength. A rogue? Why would you have a low strength, a low dexterity? I've brought characters to Game Masters before that actually stop me and go, oh, you don't know what you're doing. I see, oh, your character is wrong. Let me help and help you put it together. Oh, you're playing a rogue with your lowest score in dexterity, and you don't have any pick locks or trap finding. And they think I've never played the game before, because they think, how could anyone make that mistake? And this has happened over and over and over again in early days of gaming. But you see, your main man doesn't care, because the concept is going to be the key to being the king of that mental mindscape. You understand? When you role play, when you make the game interesting, entertaining, and energetic and awesome, that is when you win. Your fighter doesn't need an 18 double-aught strength and a 19 constitution. What you need is a little bit of soul. You need to be entertaining and interesting. You can take a look at the AD&D game. I'll plug for that. Live plays. Start with episode 1. We're up to episode 10 now, maybe even 11 by the time you see this. Maybe beyond if you're watching it thousands of years in the future. So let's think about that man. I'm playing a paladin with a 7 constitution. I had to ask the game master, because paladin had like a 9. I was like, well, you say he was a paladin before, right? And then this thing happens like right before the game. He's like lost some constitution points. 7 constitution for my paladin. Why? Because that's what I want. That's part of the concept. That's part of what makes him cool, because he's different. You understand? And that's what you want to make. So you want to make a character that's different. So when you play, and here's a big problem with playing, let's say, Dungeons and Dragons. And this can go for really any of the systems, first, second, third, 3.5, Pathfinder, with 4th edition. It'll be the same with D&D Next. They can make probably the next 20 editions of D&D they make, this will still stand as a truth. You're going to be very limited in your options when you play with core options. So, oh, well, those are play tested. Those are done well. Those are this, that, or the other thing. So what? I don't care about any of that. I care about getting the entertainment value going, the factor. As a game master, all you have to do is remember this one key fundamental principle that we have drilled into your head over and over and over here on the Main Man Experience, as I've spoken to you at home, out there in YouTube land. No! You tell the players no when they try to do something stupid. And you stack this with this, with this, with this, with this. No! You can hand me the core options of 3.5 in Vampire the Masquerade, and really any game that I know, I can sit there and completely break it. Go, here's my broken character, here's my power gamed min-max character. Am I going to do that? Of course not. But I can. In fact, I can do it even easier, because I know power gaming really has to do with competing against other players, more so than anything else, and competing against that imaginary curb of what is standardized. So if you give me less options to power game, you've just made it easier for me to control that overall curve. Because your exploration of the character here, I can bring here, maybe up here. It's not going to be that hard to utilize the tools that you've given me to optimize the character. That's, after all, what you want to stop, isn't it? You want to stop that power game. You want to stop that. You don't want to stop the imagination. You don't want to put the pause button on fun. But as a dungeon master at home, I'll tell you right now, that is just what you're doing. Trust your players. And if you can't trust them, find new players. We've been over that before. You gotta get players that get you, that get your style, that get what you're trying to put out there, that have that fun. Trust them. You may have been abused by players in your teenage years, in your college experience, but as adults, you're gonna find less of that. There are some adults out there who have been broken by the experience and will rampantly rule all your power game and even cheat. Find new players and tell players no. If you stack this with that, with this, with that, no. And it's really just that simple. Again, we can sit down here and break down a 3.5 Player's Guide, Dungeon Master's Handbook, Monster Manual, 3.5 core rules. I can bring a character that's going to be completely broken against the standard norm curve that you have there. And then I can make another, and I bring another, and I make another. It's not that difficult. And if you have players who get into that mindset, it could even create more of a greenhouse effect of power gaming. Because there's less creativity there. There's less interest and exotic aspects to the feats, which mean less concept ideas. Remember, not every player is immensely creative, is immensely imaginative, is particularly intelligent. But you want to help them. You want to give them tools. You want to get them to a place. And after all, it's just cowardice on your part if you have to do that, if you have to resort to those tactics. Because all you have to do is look at it and go, yeah, no, we're not going to use that feat. Well, why? Because I said no. Oh. And guess what? After that first player gets it, who asked? Who asked for broken stuff? Not anybody else. Just tell them that's broken. I'm not going to use it. Your next player who's maybe had that idea to bring something broken, let me scale that back a little bit. I don't want to get dressed down. And you got to dress down players every once in a while. You got to talk to players like the children sometimes. Because, well, guess what? When you're the dungeon master, you're the daddy. Not the big daddy min-max, but you might have big daddy min-max in your group slapping his gouye as is his one and custom. And you got to put him in line. You got to say, and then that's the last in line, as your man Dio has told you and prophesied. So it's important when you're putting together those players that you just be assertive and take control as a game master, and you don't run into any problems, and you don't stifle creativity, and you don't limit options, you don't limit aspects of interest. In D&D, a lot of the OGL stuff is really underpowered. It can be very interesting in their PRCs, and their base classes, and their feats, and so forth, when you bring that on board and you plug it and let them do it. When I run D&D, only feats I've ever not allowed people to have is feats that were written so poorly that collectively we couldn't come to a concerted understanding of what that feat did. It's like, well, I think it does this. Well, it says like this to me. Another player might come up with a third idea. And, that's just bad writing. So we've disallowed those. I don't think I've ever disallowed another feat. Maybe one of my players could chime in. I know a lot of you watch. Let me know if I have. It's possible. But that's the only time I've remembered actually disallowing feats. Actually, Never disallowed a class from any of the different splat books or whatever. If it works with your concept, if it works with your character, if it's going to be fun, if it's going to make sense, if it's not going to be power gained, you're not going to have a problem with any of that. Don't limit yourself to a rules as written mentality either. If you see a rule and you go, oh, I don't like that, don't go, oh, I have to use that. Change it. Play with it. Flex it out. Work the rules in any way you can to bring about the best experience, the best game, the best use of your tools. Game designers do not intend their game rules to be taken as sacred canon. They're designed because they have to put X, Y, Z in there. They have to give you a game. Here's the game. Here it is. Any game designer does not care if you change the rules. They don't. That's not what the rules are written for. They're not sacred. Break them. It drives me nuts when people have that sacred mentality of rules. They're not. As a game designer, I can tell you, therefore pretty much any other game designer, just has to make choices. And I've talked to loads of people that have made games. You know, you could talk to Phil Mercado or Mark Ryan Hagen, and they'd tell you the exact same thing. Well, yeah, you got to make a choice here. And not every time are you gonna knock it out of the park. Not every time are you gonna make the best choice. Not every time are you gonna make a choice that's gonna work best for every game master's toolbox. Game masters use different tools. I have a certain way of doing things because I have a certain set of skills, a particular set of skills. And you're going to have a particular set of skills as well, so you want to use everything you can to capitalize on that. That's really largely what my channel is about. Here's how I do things. Extrapolate from that what you can, work it with your tools, make the best possible game. Do not be afraid, and do not ever be afraid of your players. Because guess what? You're the guy running the game. They're showing up to play. That means you're in control. The second you start coming out of control, the game spirals in a horrible direction, becomes much worse, and you produce a worse game. Guess who gets blamed for that? You. Don't be blamed for that. Make the best game you can. Be flexible. Be like water. Do not be like earth when you're putting together any kind of RPG. It produces a better experience. And remember, just like Jesse Ventura, your main man is a fighter. And go check out my store. The link is going to be below.